So my big promise to you over the course of this course is that you're not only going to gain confidence and understand like a well-trodden path into product management, but you're going to actually have proven ways that you can action on today to go away and implement and act on in order to break into product management. And I promise you that if you do these ways, I'll be very surprised you won't get at least interviews as a product manager for roles that you want. Okay. So here's the first of the four ways to break into product management. I'll split it into a couple of videos to make it a little bit more digestible rather than just listening to my voice for an hour. I hate listening to my own voice. So the 1980s, we're going to go on a little bit of a historical lesson here. The 1980s were pivotal for two reasons. Okay. Firstly, I was obviously born. 1980s baby. But secondly, like we saw companies like Microsoft have this like program manager role, which is like the early stages of like what product managers were. And they noticed that there was this problem where actually there was technical engineers that were forming technical requirements for products, but these products were for users. And they need someone to be a facilitator and a translator between the two, between the engineers that were coming up with these technical requirements to work on these technical solutions, but also the requirements that were needed from the users so that you could build these products for users. Okay. And this was all pioneered by actually Intuit. And their first product, Intuit's first product was called Quicken. It's still actually a product today. And the co-founder of Intuit, Scott Cook, famously created this program called Follow Me Home. And today we call these like observational studies. When you literally go into your user's home or into their environment of work and literally observe them and take diary sessions or take notes on actually what they're doing, how they're reacting to things. And what they learned through doing that study is the unholy workarounds that users were doing in order to do their own accounting. And this is predating the days of where Excel wasn't as popular, right? So a lot of this was manual, a lot of this was really painful, but it gave them insight into actually, if that's such an unholy user experience, what does a pleasurable and delightful, great user experience look like? And that's what we're going to use to inform the creation of this initial product. Okay. And it's important to understand Scott Cook's historical context, which is why I've put this text on the left. Like Scott Cook was what we call a P&G brand man. And P&G brand men were essentially like similar to product managers. They were taking these requirements from users and understanding actually what customers wanted and what customers reacting to and what customers were doing. And using that to inform initially the sales and the marketing teams within their companies to make changes based on what they're learning from their customers. So P&G actually as a company were the pioneers of this. And that's why you see a lot of product management came from actually marketing. And we have now this bridge role called product marketing, which kind of sits in between the two. So what do we actually do as product managers? I've put a definition here on the left, and I've got an image here from someone called Martin Erickson, who famously published a blog post on Mind the Product, and he's the co-founder of this product management community, which we'll touch on later, called Mind the Product, who do a monthly event called Product Tank. And this image really here, this Venn diagram, and I guess product managers love things like Venn diagrams, really sums up and visualizes what product management manager does as a facilitator and a translator. Before, in that previous example, I explained how we were translated between the customer or the user and tech. And here that's represented with UX and with tech. Okay. But we're also a translator for the rest of the business, because sometimes you need to understand the viability of whether this is compliant, whether this aligns to marketing, whether actually we can train our salespeople to sell this product, whether actually our customer support can support this product and understand the common FAQs related to this product. Like, it actually is that translator role where you're actually managing stakeholders and spending a lot of time with people, whether it's your customers externally or internally as your business stakeholders, because ultimately customer value equals business value. And here on the left, I want to touch on a few things that I've highlighted. Okay, so a product manager works at the intersection of business, UX, and tech, which I've just described, to discover a product. Okay, and the reason I highlighted discover is because the product manager is not an engineer. They're not coding and building the product. Okay, so they need to validate what is the right problem to solve and why. You need to almost prioritize that. And then secondly, you need to decide, how are we going to try and solve this solution, solve this problem? How are we going to meet these user needs? So you're trying to prioritize what is the right thing to build, which is called product discovery. And then in product delivery is building the thing right. And that's where engineers take place. So in product discovery, often a product manager and a UX designer will probably work more intensively on really discovering what's the right problem to solve. If you have the luxury of a user researcher, they'll be involved in that process too. If you have the luxury of a data analyst, they'll be providing data to quantify the patterns that lead to you exploring the why behind the what by speaking to customers. I hope this is making sense. But product delivery is where actually is more engineering heavy. Okay. And that's where we're talking about delivering the things right, like actually building the solutions that we've discovered during product discovery. And during product discovery, we're not going to get into too much detail today, but there's 4 main risks that you're trying to validate. One is a value risk. Is this something someone's willing to transact, buy, or use? The second thing is a usability risk. Like, can someone actually use this without an explainer video, without me holding their hand through this experience? The third is a technical feasibility risk. And that's where we need to lean on like our lead engineer. Like, technically, can we actually build this solution? Do we have the capabilities in-house? You know, is it to do with something like machine learning, but no one in-house knows machine learning? Or would it need us to build it on Java, but no one knows Java internally? And then finally, what's the business viability risk? Like from a compliance perspective and a regulatory perspective, can we do this? From a marketing perspective, is this something we can deliver on? From a customer support perspective, can we support this product given the current capacity that we have? And these are the main 4 risks that you're trying to validate again during product discovery. And as I described, even during that process, you're validating it with customers, right? So you're still at that inflection point between UX, tech, and the rest of the business. And here you see that I highlighted valuable, usable, and feasible. That's talking to the product risks that I've just walked through in terms of validating those risks during discovery. So in terms of responsibilities, it's quite wide-ranging, as you can see here on this slide. Like, this survey was done among just under 300 product managers. A lot of them, as you can see here described, are working on strategic things such as setting up the roadmap, which you might hear about a lot. We're not going to touch on it too much in this course, but that's the path to execution. That's what we're going to work on and why, and what's been prioritized and why, and how we're going to measure the results in terms of key metrics. A lot are responsible for writing user stories, and anyone with a business analyst background is probably used to that, writing user stories, describing actually who is the user, what function are they trying to perform, and what is the result that they're trying to achieve, and writing that in a digestible way that engineers understand when working on these tickets, usually with acceptance criteria and testing steps. And then there's customer interviews, actually spending time with your customers to either understand generative research, like who is my customer, and let me understand a little bit about that, but also evaluative research, where you're trying to evaluate actually whether a certain idea that you have proposed or you want to test resonates with your user and meets those user needs. Managing a development team is really important to highlight here that as a product manager, when you're working in a product team with UX designers and with engineers, they're not your direct reports. You're not managing them in that sense. You're more inspiring them and influencing them and helping them to guide them on this journey on building the right thing. You're not managing them in that sense. And it's really important to understand that as a product manager. Next here we have prototyping. So it depends on where you lean on. If you have a UX designer, they may do the majority of the prototyping. And prototyping is just a technique that we use during product discovery. Hiring is another thing that obviously you want to be involved in, especially when it comes to hiring product managers. But also sometimes you want to sit in technical interviews so that you're providing that voice of the customer. You're understanding that voice of the business, and you're providing that non-tech perspective on whether that person will culturally fit in with the team, for example, above and beyond their technical capabilities. Then finally, we've got a few other things here like A/B testing is mentioned. Where you're doing multivariable testing on whether like different examples of this landing page really resonate with our users, for example. And then here, setting up revenue targets. And a lot of the product managers that I engage with are often not actually in charge of revenue and P&L, but it makes a difference when you are. And a lot of the traditional product managers that came from, for example, banking products, like I manage a credit card or I manage a mortgage or overdraft, which was traditional product managers that manage those products in banking. Often when they transition into product management in terms of managing software, sometimes they take some of that responsibility in terms of managing the P&L and revenue targets. So here we see that 80% of product management reported strategizing on a daily basis. But it's not all glamorous, right? It's good to actually see this and understand that a lot of the time you're spending in meetings, digesting things from meetings, contributing to meetings, understanding different perspectives, synthesizing what you're listening and hearing in those meetings. And meetings can even include things like customer interviews, even though user research is pulled out here. Emails. Like just managing communication. Like communication is one of those things you need to be really good at as a product manager, because you're communicating with your roadmaps, you're communicating in your meetings, you're communicating over emails, you're communicating with customers, you're communicating with wide reaching stakeholders across the business. It's actually a relationship role. It's about relationship building and really managing winning relationships, like what I described at the beginning. Then here, when it says strategy, that's anything from working on your roadmap to actually talking with leadership around the direction you're trying to take the company, about the vision, the strategy, and how that translates into the roadmap and actual results and tactics that you work on a daily basis. Here, analytics is really important to be comfortable with understanding analytics, because analytics often gives you a pattern on user behavior, which describes the what, where actually when you interview a user is when you really understand the why behind the what. So what's actually driving that trend? So a good example is, only 30% of people that start registration complete it. That is a pattern. That's what analytics tells me. But in order to find why they're not completing it, I need to speak to at least 5 to 10 users, right? Then user research, often taking a lot of time. And design is here, but it depends on the size of your team. A typical product team should have a UX designer, product manager, and engineers. That's your core team. Okay. And then outside of that, there's additional roles which depend on how big the company is and how much budget you have, such as user researchers and data analysts or business analysts as well. Okay. So understanding product management. So it's really important to understand from the offset the difference, in my opinion, between a project manager and a product manager, okay? And it's really important actually to understand the org structure and the hierarchy within an organization, because when you have a CIO, Chief Information Officer, they should be actually in charge of run-in-the-mill BAU managing IT within your organization, okay? And IT is often managed by projects. Okay, so you can have a project manager who's in charge of integrating your help desk software such as Zendesk. Okay, that's not product management. That's a project manager. That can be worked on in a waterfall fashion. Like, I must speak to stakeholders at Zendesk. I must get our requirements across to Zendesk. I must first do this technical feasibility workshop. I must then integrate this first layer of Zendesk and do testing. I must then integrate the rest of Zendesk and do testing, and then penny test the whole thing end to end. That is project management, okay? And then we have, things like Salesforce, which is CRM, where, again, it could follow that same waterfall type fashion. And what you're doing there is integrating into existing software. And that is what I call IT. And that is what you would be managed by the CIO organization, the Chief Information Officer. All of those can be run as projects, okay? And you know that it can be run by projects because if those systems go down, they do not directly affect your customer. They do not impact your customer. So if Zendesk goes down, your customer is not impacted, If I'm managing a payments platform like TransferWise, they can still make a transfer, which is the job that they came here to do. If Salesforce goes wise, they can still make a transfer, which is what they came here to do. However, when something is customer enabling, such as there's a payments API that links into our web app as well as our mobile app, as well as third-party services like into the Monzo app and N26 app, if that API goes down, it impacts our customers. If that API goes down, they cannot make their payments, which is the job they came here to do. So that is a product, and that needs to be managed by a product manager. So anything that any software that goes down and impacts our customers should be managed by a product manager. So that's customer enabling products such as APIs. Okay, that's back-end products. Another is customer facing products, which is what most people are more familiar with, such as like the TransferWise app or the TransferWise web application, you know, what we browse on the internet on our desktop. If those go down, it impacts our customers because our customers cannot make their transfers. They cannot make their payments, which is a primary job they came to do. So product managers manage these because these are products. Okay. These are customer facing products and customer enabling products. Project managers manage things that are run in the mill, BAU, like Zendesk and Salesforce. Okay. But sometimes there's a handover. Okay. Sometimes you're handing over a project to become part of a product. A great example of this is that, you know, I might be on ASOS and I might be integrating as a project manager Klarna as a new payments option. So in the background, I'm working on integrating Klarna so that we can use Klarna as an option. Now, as a customer coming onto ASOS to purchase a gift, unaware that Klarna is coming, I can still make my payments. Okay, I'm not aware that Klarna is coming as a payment option. But as soon as Klarna comes as a payment option onto the platform, then it gets managed as a product by a product manager because it's part of, let's say, the checkout experience, which is what one product manager may be managing. And now it's entered into that world. It's part of the product and it should be managed as a product. Not as a separate product, but it's part of this product area because now you're in checkouts. And in checkouts, I'm managing Visa payments, MasterCard payments, and Klarna payments, and PayPal payments. That's all my world, baby. So that's what we now call a product. Okay, so that's the difference between product managers and project managers, and it's important to understand that definition between the two. Okay, another thing I want to demystify is that a product manager is not a mini CEO. We hear this time and time again that a product manager is a mini CEO. No, they're not. As a CEO, your responsibility is rooted in shareholder value. How can I provide value to my shareholders, who are often my board? You know, whether you're VC backed or not, is your board. Like, how can I provide value to them? And often that's in terms of growth, in terms of revenue, and sometimes in terms of profit, okay, depending on what type of company you are. So all of their activities are honed around that. And at the beginning of that journey as a CEO, you are doing a little bit of everything. But then over time, you relinquish responsibility and you give autonomy to your teams. So now actually you have, let's say, a CMO looking after marketing, you have a CFO looking after finance, you know, you have a HR director looking after hiring, and actually now they're responsible in the same way you may have a CPO, chief product officer, looking after product. Okay. And then your primary value add is to customers always. Okay. As a product manager, you do not have that responsibility with that shareholder value for your board. That is not your realm. That doesn't matter to you. You do not have direct reports across the C-suite. So you're not a mini CEO. It's a really bad comparison. It's really good to understand the difference. The reason people say it is because product managers often go on to make good founders because of all of that varied skill set of stakeholder management, understanding the rest of the business, but also being really good at building the actual products or discovering the actual products themselves and work with engineers to actually build those products. Okay, so here's the 9 fundamental traits of a product manager. One is solving customer problems. That's what you're here to do. That is where you deliver value. You're here to solve customer problems and understand what those problems are through conducting user research and understanding the data that you have over your customers. Secondly, it's about really collaborating with a variety of people. I've described this time and time again. It's a people business. If you're not really comfortable with that, this is not the role for you because you will not enjoy doing this role. Thirdly, it's about developing and executing on strategy. Okay, so playing a part in shaping that strategy and taking ownership over that strategy, regardless if you fail or not. And when you do fail, it's lessons learned, which needs to get incorporated into how you move more intelligently moving forward. Fourth, reducing risk through testing early and often. That's what I described earlier on as product discovery. Remember, we're trying to reduce risks in terms of value risk, usability risk, technical feasibility risk, and finally, business viability risk. And again, you're leading a team through influence, not authority. You're not managing them. They're not your direct reports. Then you're communicating through a varied array of different tools, whether it's through meetings, through emails, through your Jira board or your workflow or your Trello or through your roadmaps. There's all these different ways that you're communicating through your sprint reviews, all of these different methods of communicating, right? You need to be comfortable with decision making, right? Sometimes there's a little bit of gut when you're initially making a decision, but try and be as informed by data as possible, but not held ransom by it so that you're not acting, which is really dangerous. Next is about creating products customers love, which links right down to point number 1 about solving customer problems. Your value and your KPIs and what you're measuring in terms of your key metrics need to be rooted in creating products that customers love. And then number 9 is really about being organized, detail orientated, and prepared. Okay, like no one's going to manage your schedule. No one's going to manage what you choose to prioritize and why. No one's going to tell you to do things in a certain order. You need to be self-disciplined and self-organized in that way, which is why it really benefits people who are continuous learners and self-directed with that learning. And the final thing I want to add is that like direction over speed is one of my core principles when it comes to careers. It's not about moving with speed in the wrong direction. It's about being directional. And even if that means traveling slow, sometimes having bumps along the journey, like if you're on a train, stopping intermittently at different stops, it's okay to move slow as long as you're moving in the right direction. So always think about direction over speed with how you develop your career as a product manager. Okay, I'm going to save this for our next course, our next video, because I've gone through a lot. But I'm about to go through some of the key influences in this space and some great books to read, podcasts to listen to, and videos to check out.